Top 20 Communication Specialist Interview Questions and Answers. Explore the top 20 communication specialist interview questions and expert-crafted answers designed to help you confidently showcase your communication skills, strategic thinking, and media relations expertise during your interview. 1. Can you describe your experience in developing and implementing communication strategies? In my previous roles, I've led the creation and execution of integrated communication strategies that aligned with business objectives. This involved audience research, message development, channel selection, and timeline management. I collaborated closely with cross-functional teams, including marketing, HR, and leadership, to ensure messaging consistency and clarity. One key initiative was a company rebranding campaign that improved stakeholder perception and increased employee engagement by 35%. I regularly assessed outcomes using KPIs like media reach, engagement rates, and internal survey feedback, refining our approach to maximize impact and maintain strategic alignment. 2. How do you tailor your communication style for different audiences, e.g., executives, employees, media, customers? I begin by analyzing the audience's needs, expectations, and preferred communication channels. For executives, I use concise, data-driven messaging that emphasizes strategic outcomes. For employees, I focus on clarity, transparency, and relevance to their roles, often using visual aids or Q&A formats. When communicating with media, I ensure messaging is newsworthy and fact-based, while for customers, the tone is friendly, benefits-focused, and aligned with brand voice. I adapt vocabulary, tone, and complexity based on the audience's familiarity with the topic, ensuring the message is engaging and actionable for each group. 3. What tools or methodologies do you use to measure the effectiveness of communication campaigns? I utilize a combination of quantitative and qualitative tools. Key metrics include engagement rates, likes, shares, comments, open and click-through rates for emails, media coverage reach, sentiment analysis, and employee feedback through surveys or focus groups. Tools such as Google Analytics, Hootsuite, Meltwater, and internal dashboards help track performance. I also conduct pre- and post-campaign assessments to compare awareness levels or behavioral shifts. Regular reporting allows me to refine messaging and strategy based on data insights, ensuring that communication efforts continually align with organizational goals and audience expectations. 4. Can you provide an example of a high-impact communication piece you've written, e.g., press release, internal memo, social media post? I once crafted an internal memo announcing a major organizational restructuring. It was crucial to maintain transparency while reassuring employees. I worked closely with leadership to ensure accuracy and used clear, empathetic language. The memo outlined the reasons behind the changes, expected impacts, and support resources. Feedback showed that employees appreciated the honest and respectful tone, which reduced anxiety and speculation. Engagement in follow-up town halls increased significantly. The clarity and timing of this communication helped maintain trust and fostered a smoother transition during a challenging time. 5. How do you ensure clarity and consistency in messaging across different channels? To maintain clarity and consistency, I develop a core messaging framework that outlines key themes, tone, and terminology. This ensures all teams reference a unified communication standard. I create templates, editorial calendars, and brand voice guidelines to keep content aligned across platforms. Before launch, I conduct message testing and reviews with stakeholders to verify accuracy and tone. Regular audits of published content help identify inconsistencies, which I address promptly. Additionally, cross-functional collaboration ensures that internal, external, and digital communications all reflect the same strategic narrative. 6. Describe a time when you had to explain a complex topic in simple terms. How did you approach it? At my previous company, I was tasked with explaining a new data privacy policy to all employees. The original legal language was dense and confusing. I collaborated with legal and HR to fully understand the policy, then translated it into a simplified FAQ format with real-life examples. I also created an infographic and hosted a webinar with a live Q&A. Feedback showed increased understanding and compliance, with 90% of staff confirming they found the materials helpful. My approach focused on breaking down jargon, using analogies, and choosing accessible formats to ensure message retention. 7. How do you build and maintain relationships with journalists and media outlets? Building media relationships starts with understanding each journalist's beat and preferences. I maintain a detailed media contact list and personalize my outreach with relevant, timely story angles. I offer exclusive insights, background information, or expert access to add value. Consistent follow-up, prompt responses, and respecting deadlines are key to earning trust. I also engage with journalists on social media and attend industry events to strengthen rapport. By being a reliable source and prioritizing mutual benefit, I've built lasting relationships that result in more accurate and favorable media coverage. 8. Can you share an example of a successful media pitch you've developed? What made it effective? I once pitched a story about our company's innovative sustainability initiative. To make it compelling, I focused on human interest and societal impact, highlighting employee involvement and measurable environmental benefits. I tailored the pitch to specific journalists and included multimedia assets like photos and a short video. The result was coverage in 3 major industry publications and local news outlets. What made it effective was the timely relevance, strong narrative, and clear alignment with the journalist's interests. The story drove positive brand sentiment and boosted our community engagement metrics. 9. How would you handle a situation where a negative story about the company is trending in the media? In such a scenario, I would immediately gather all facts from internal teams to understand the situation. I'd then develop a holding statement and designate a spokesperson. Transparency, empathy, and factual accuracy are key in crisis messaging. I would proactively engage with media to correct misinformation and provide context. Simultaneously, I'd monitor public sentiment, engage on social media respectfully, and keep internal stakeholders informed to avoid speculation. Post-crisis, I'd conduct a debrief to assess response effectiveness and identify improvements. The goal is to preserve trust and guide the narrative responsibly. 10. What strategies do you use to enhance engagement on social media platforms? I use a mix of content planning, audience targeting, and interactive tactics. I create platform-specific content that's visually appealing, timely, and aligns with brand voice. I schedule posts consistently and monitor analytics to identify optimal posting times. Engagement is driven through polls, contests, Q&As, and responding promptly to comments. I also leverage user-generated content, hashtags, and paid promotions to extend reach. Collaborating with influencers and internal ambassadors adds authenticity. A/B testing helps refine what works best. Overall, the strategy is data-informed, audience-focused, and continuously optimized based on feedback and performance. 11. How do you handle negative comments or PR crisis on social media? During a social media crisis or when receiving negative comments, I prioritize timely, calm, and respectful responses. I acknowledge the concern publicly when appropriate and take sensitive discussions offline to resolve them privately. If the criticism is valid, I ensure the organization takes responsibility and outlines corrective actions. In the case of misinformation, I share accurate facts without escalating tensions. I work closely with customer service and legal teams to ensure alignment. Monitoring sentiment with tools like Brandwatch or Sprout Social helps track issues and adjust messaging quickly to protect brand reputation. 12. What metrics do you track to evaluate the success of digital communication efforts? To evaluate digital communication success, I track both engagement and conversion metrics. Key indicators include impressions, reach, likes, shares, click-through rates, CTR, bounce rates, time spent on page, and conversion rates. On social media, follower growth and sentiment analysis also play a role. For email campaigns, open rates and unsubscribe rates are important. I use tools like Google Analytics, HubSpot, and native platform analytics to generate detailed reports. These metrics help me understand content performance, audience behavior, and ROI, enabling data-driven refinements for future campaigns and clearer alignment with communication goals. 13. How do you ensure effective communication between leadership and employees? I facilitate effective top-down communication by translating leadership messages into clear, relatable language that resonates with employees. I use multi-channel strategies like town halls, internal newsletters, intranet updates, and team briefings to ensure reach and comprehension. Two-way communication is encouraged through surveys, Q&A sessions, and feedback platforms. I also advise leaders on presentation styles and emotional intelligence to improve message delivery. Regularly measuring engagement and adjusting based on feedback ensures that communication stays transparent, timely, and supportive of company culture. My goal is to bridge strategic vision with everyday understanding. 14. Describe a time when you had to manage communication during an organizational change, e.g., restructuring, merger. During a company restructuring, I led the internal communication plan to minimize uncertainty and maintain morale. I worked closely with HR and senior leadership to craft honest, empathetic messages explaining the change, timeline, and support available to affected employees. We used FAQs, live virtual town halls, and personalized emails to address concerns. I ensured consistency across all channels and updated stakeholders regularly. Employee feedback showed appreciation for the transparency, and productivity remained stable throughout the transition. This experience reinforced the importance of early communication, emotional intelligence, and accessible leadership during change. 15. How do you handle situations where stakeholders have conflicting communication needs? I begin by identifying each stakeholder's objectives, priorities, and concerns. I then look for overlapping interests to build a unified message framework. In cases where full alignment isn't possible, I create tailored versions of core messages that address specific needs without compromising overall consistency. I mediate discussions to find acceptable compromises and ensure everyone feels heard. Clear documentation and approval processes help avoid misunderstandings. Open, proactive communication and diplomacy are key to managing expectations. This approach fosters trust and maintains coherence in external and internal messaging across departments or partner organizations. 16. What steps do you take to prepare a crisis communication plan? I start by conducting a risk assessment to identify potential crisis scenarios. Then, I define roles and responsibilities within a crisis response team, ensuring everyone knows their function. The plan includes pre-drafted holding statements, media protocols, and internal communication templates. I set up approval workflows, media monitoring tools, and a contact list of key stakeholders and journalists. I also develop a decision tree for escalation and outline guidelines for social media response. The plan is regularly reviewed and tested through simulations to ensure readiness. Preparation ensures quick, consistent, and confident communication during a crisis. 17. Can you give an example of a crisis you managed? What was your approach, and what was the outcome? At a previous company, a data breach affected customer information. I immediately activated our crisis communication plan, collaborating with IT, legal, and customer service. We released a public statement within hours, explaining what happened, what we were doing, and how customers could protect themselves. Internally, we communicated updates to employees to keep them informed and aligned. We monitored media and social platforms continuously and responded transparently to inquiries. Thanks to our timely, empathetic, and informative approach, media coverage remained neutral, customer trust was preserved, and we avoided significant brand damage. 18. How do you balance transparency and confidentiality during a crisis? Balancing transparency with confidentiality requires strategic judgment. I start by clearly understanding what information is legally and ethically shareable. I prioritize honesty while protecting sensitive details that could lead to misinformation, legal exposure, or panic. I craft messages that acknowledge the issue and show empathy without revealing unconfirmed or proprietary details. I work closely with legal and executive teams to align on messaging boundaries. Regular updates help maintain trust without disclosing more than is appropriate. The key is to communicate frequently, be factual, and assure audiences that their concerns are being addressed. 19. Tell me about a time when a communication strategy you implemented failed. What did you learn? I once launched an internal newsletter meant to boost employee engagement, but it saw low open and click-through rates. Upon reviewing feedback and analytics, I discovered the content was too formal and not aligned with employees' interests. I revised the approach by introducing shorter, more visually appealing content, employee spotlights, and interactive polls. Engagement improved significantly in the following months. This experience taught me the importance of audience research, testing, and feedback loops. Communication must be dynamic and responsive, not just informative, to truly resonate and be effective. 20. How do you stay updated on the latest trends in corporate communication and PR? I stay current through a mix of professional development, reading, and networking. I subscribe to leading industry publications like PR Daily, Harvard Business Review, and Communication World. I attend webinars, conferences, and workshops hosted by IABC, PRSA, and similar organizations. I also participate in online forums and follow thought leaders on LinkedIn and X, formerly Twitter. Additionally, I monitor emerging technologies and tools that can enhance communication strategies. Staying engaged with the industry ensures I bring innovative, data-driven, and best practice approaches to every communication initiative I lead. Mastering these top 20 communication specialist interview questions and answers will give you a competitive edge and boost your confidence. Whether you're preparing for your first role or advancing your career, understanding how to articulate your expertise in communication strategy, media relations, and crisis management is key to success.